Welcome to Conversations with Big Rich. This is an interview-style podcast. Those interviews are all involved in the off-road industry. Being involved, like all of my guests are, is a lifestyle, not just a job. I talk to competitive teams, racers, rock crawlers, business owners, employees, media, and private park owners, men and women who have found their way into this exciting and addictive lifestyle. We discuss their personal history, struggles, successes, and reboots. We dive into what drives them to stay active in off-road. We all hope to shed some light on how to find a path into this world we live and love and call off-road.
Whether you're crawling the Red Rocks of Moab or hauling your toys to the trail, Maxxis has the tires you can trust for performance and durability. 4 wheels or 2. Maxxis tires are the choice of champions because they know that whether for work or play, for fun or competition, Maxxis tires deliver. Choose Maxxis. Tread victoriously.
Have you seen 4Low magazine yet? 4Low magazine is a high-quality, well-written, four-wheel drive-focused magazine for the enthusiast market. If you still love the idea of a printed magazine, something to save and read at any time, 4Low is the magazine for you. 4Low cannot be found in stores, but you can have it delivered to your home or place of business. Visit 4lowmagazine.com to order your subscription today. On today's episode of Conversations with Big Rich, we have Ryan Miller. Ryan is a rock crawler, dirt riot racer, Ultra 4 navigator, a flatty lover, internet fact checker, and the husband to Rebel Rally winner Kaylee Miller, father and rattlesnake bite survivor. So I want to say, Ryan, thank you for coming on board and sharing your history with us. So yeah, thanks. Good to see you. Very good to hear you, I should say.
Yeah, thanks, Rich.
So let's jump right into it. And, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Phoenix, so 100 miles north of where I'm living now. And pretty much, we moved houses, but lived in Phoenix all the way up through high school. But we spent a lot of time up in northern Arizona. My parents have a place up in the mountains up there that's pretty rural.
Excellent. And so growing up, going to school, that kind of stuff, did you play any sports or anything, or have you been more academic, or what was your early life like?
Kind of both. I played Little League baseball and I played in some basketball leagues. Probably up until freshman, sophomore year of high school about. And, I took a lot of school classes, extra classes. I was in the, gifted programs, which is, they moved you up a year or two in certain subjects or all of them. And in high school, I wasn't really involved with anything at the school. So my counselor said, you need to get involved with an extracurricular activity at school. So I joined the band. I had played instruments in elementary school, but I joined band in high school and ended up being in marching band and jazz band because I like those both. And then I ended up playing tennis of all things.
Nice.
And never picked up a tennis racket in my life before freshman year of high school. And my counselor that said that, he was actually the tennis coach. And he said, why don't you just come out and check it out? Well, 3 weeks before the season started was when they started their practices. And that was the first time I'd ever picked up a tennis racket in my life. And I made the varsity team as a freshman.
Nice.
And I think I actually, when I graduated, I had like the most wins in school history for the tennis team, which I was just like, okay, apparently I'm good at tennis, I guess.
Well, it's an eye-hand coordination sport. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So then you were a gifted student, which doesn't surprise me, knowing you as well as I think I do. Um, what school? You said in the Phoenix area. Were you Scottsdale or Phoenix itself,
Uh,
or
Phoenix to Glendale.
okay?
The house that I lived in when I was little was in Phoenix, and then my parents moved a couple miles north to Glendale. My high school, I guess you would say, Glendale. It's on Glendale Avenue. So
Okay, all right.
yeah.
And so did you take shop classes or anything like that?
Funny thing. I was very excited to go to that high school because they had a wood shop and a auto shop. Which growing up, my dad was a custom carpenter, so we had a giant wood shop in the backyard. And I would go out there and make stuff on all of his equipment and, you know, have fun. And so the wood shop kind of wasn't exciting to me as much because I could do that at home. But they actually ended auto shop my freshman year of high school. So I never was able to do that.
That sucks.
Yeah. Of all things, right? That was a long time ago. That was 1996.
Okay.
So, I mean, you would think nowadays it's like how many schools have an auto shop? Like zero. But yeah, they ended that. The last auto shop class was the year before I started. So
That sucks. I think that's something that schools need to bring back.
yeah. I mean, at that point, I already owned one vehicle, and I didn't even have a learner's permit yet.
Okay.
So, and then at the end of my freshman year of high school, I actually owned two vehicles by then. So
Nice. And what were they?
I had a 68 Chevy CST long bed 2-wheel drive truck. And then I had a 71 Suburban 4-wheel drive. That was pretty much my daily driver because I was building the 68. That's what I bought for myself as a birthday present. So
Nice. So then your the kind of classes that you enjoyed most, or was it just, did everything come easy, or was it did you have to work at getting, the solid grades?
My wife and I were just talking about this the other day. Like I said, I was pretty much in all the advanced classes. So you're already 1 to 2 years ahead. Math was like a gimme. I didn't have to try at all, really. The teachers would actually tell me, you're required to come to the final exam of the year, even though if you got a 0 on it, you would still get an A for the class, and stuff like that. But like science was fine. Everything was okay. English was like just that was my nemesis because I'm very strong at math, so English is a little bit tougher. But I don't read very fast. Like when I read something, I absorb it, but I don't read fast. So when you're in these advanced English classes, they're reading like a new book every 2 weeks, and it's not like little books, it's big books. And this is what my wife and I were talking about is, like, oh, we're going to read Crime and Punishment. Oh, okay. Well, that's 600 pages long. Well, a book like that, it takes me like 4 to 5 minutes to read one page. So I'm like, so in the next 2 weeks, I have to read for 60 hours. Like, how can I do that? Like, so, in my head, being math person, I'm like, I have to read like 5 hours a night in order to finish this book. Like ridiculous. So English was actually my only class in all of high school. 1 year, 1 semester, I got 1 B, and that was it.
Wow. You still got a B. That's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
I mean, I got through English classes by being the yearbook photographer.
Oh,
so I didn't take any. That was my English requirement, and it was like that was easy because I was a photographer. I didn't even have to write anything.
If I could have had that option, that would have been easier.
It probably didn't help me any now, but it was an easy way for me to get through those.
Yeah.
So then you became a pretty good tennis player pretty quick. What was the driving factor there?
I just don't like to suck at stuff.
Okay.
So, I mean, I grew up playing ping pong a lot, so with my dad. So that, it doesn't exactly translate over, but it's pretty close. It's still a paddle sport, or a racket,
Right.
and I just didn't like to lose, so I just wanted to win, and it is tough because a lot of these other guys that people that play tennis usually grow up doing it from being little, and or they're seniors or juniors at other schools that you're playing against, and I'm a freshman, so it was
Right.
it's tough, but I don't know, I just didn't like to lose, and I had fun doing it, so it was something to do.
Okay.
I don't like being bored.
So then band, what you said you played jazz and in the marching band. What was
Yeah.
your instrument?
Well, so in elementary school, I had liked jazz. That's what I did as, I don't know what requirement that would be in elementary school nowadays, but I played in the jazz band. I played tenor saxophone. It was a lot of fun. I like that. I like jazz music. It's pretty cool. Usually the older stuff, from when jazz first started.
Right.
Playing all that stuff, and then in a marching band, I played what it's called the sousaphone, but it's the tuba. And our marching band in high school actually was very, very, very good. Pretty much won every competition we went to.
That's
A lot of times tubas are just kind of like they're the background instrument, whatever. But we actually had like features. There was 3 of us, and a lot of the places we went to for competitions, the judges were very surprised because they're like, "Huh, no one ever does that." Okay.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. You guys, all 3 of you must have been pretty good then, if you got features.
Yeah, I think it would be hard for me to remember, but I know that one of the other people, that wasn't their instrument either. Like I didn't play sousaphone. It's just I played in the jazz band, and the band director was like, "Hey, do you think you could play a sousaphone in marching band?" And I was like, "I don't know. Well, I'll give it a shot." So
So you pick so he picks you with the largest instrument out there.
yeah. Yeah, nowadays these kids have a fiberglass ones, so they're super light. Back then they were still all metal.
Right. I can't imagine I didn't realize that fiberglass. Huh. Interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, they still to make them lighter, that was like towards my senior year, they started making them in fiberglass, like the valves and stuff were still metal just for the sound. But the rest of the instrument was all fiberglass after that, so that way it wasn't so heavy.
Okay.
Because they're not light.
No, they're not. That's and at least when you're a drummer, you have the harness and everything else to distribute across the body. Where
Yeah.
I don't think that was really the case with the sousaphone. So
No, that on one shoulder in one spot only, and that was it.
Yeah. It's like carrying a kid.
Yeah.
As a man, women are built to carry kids. Of course, they don't want to hear that. I'm probably getting in trouble for that one. Anyway, so let's talk about how you got involved in off road, in wheeling.
Well, so growing up, my dad always liked going out and camping, and we'd go camping, we'd go out into the forest, ride quads, motorcycles. I think I was 5, got a quad for Christmas. That was fun.
Nice.
And my parents, like I said, bought a place up in the White Mountains. And we spent a lot of time up there, usually every weekend that isn't in the middle of winter, because it gets pretty cold and lots of snow up there. And then a lot of time during the summer when I wasn't in school. And my dad had a 72 Chevy 4-wheel drive short bed truck. And then for the property up there, he bought an old flat fender Willys Jeep. And that's what I learned to drive on, was his truck and the Jeep. And I think, like, as old as I could be, where I could barely reach the pedals, I was driving things like probably 8 years old. The Willys Jeep had no brakes, so that was interesting. And they also have, no synchro first and reverse gears, so you had to come to a complete stop in order to shift, which with no brakes, real fun.
So was the no brakes just of lack of maintenance, or I know that brakes kind of suck in them anyway.
Yeah, he had bought it, and it was missing like actual brake, like it had no brake drums. I think they even removed 2 of the backing plates. So, yeah, for it. It's just for up there, just gonna putz it around. Okay. And that's the way it was for 10 years probably. Until he found a nicer one, and he bought that one and then sold our old one to the neighbor. And but that's what I just learned to drive on, was that, that old thing in his truck. And that was, up until that was years before I had a driver's license.
Right. So. And so just cruising around up in the White Mountains, that's the area below Payson?
Above
Payson, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
To the east. So they're like, where they're at is just below 7,000 feet elevation right there.
Okay. And that's I know that there's the Apache tribe up there, the White Mountain Apache.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's
a
real beautiful area.
Like I said, they're pretty rural. My dad, he had told the realtor, I want you to have to be lost to find me. So you got to turn down a couple dirt roads to get out to where we are. And the rim is the kind of the geological divide between the lowland desert and the high mountains there. And they're about 5 miles straight line to the edge of the rim, which is also where the Indian reservation starts.
Okay.
You're not way out in the middle of nowhere, but they're not near anything. You got to drive 20-30 minutes to get to a gas station.
So you don't leave when you're on empty.
Yeah, you gotta, every time you go to town or something, you fill up some gas jugs and bring them back.
There you go. So did you hunt and fish and all that kind of stuff as a kid?
Yeah, we actually went fishing a lot up there. My dad had a fishing boat, and we actually hunted out of that area a couple times growing up, which was nice because we could just go up and stay at the property. And a big fire came through my senior year of high school there. It was the Rodeo Chetaskai fire, which is actually the second biggest now, I think, fire in AZ history. Okay. It was like 500,000 acres, and the first place it got, because it was a fire that was started intentionally. It was on the Indian reservation, and it went up the rim, and the first place it hit was the little community out where my parents are, and it burned everything on the whole property except for the cabin.
Wow. Okay.
But that included my dad's truck and his Jeep and the fishing boat and all of our hunting stuff, because that's where we kept it all. And after that, it was like, I think that he was pretty sad about that. My dad was. So the only thing that he replaced out of all of that was his Jeep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
What was
And
in all the trees in the area and everything were pretty devastated? Has it grown back?
well, it's pretty interesting because so we have 5 acres, and there's like a tree line on the north end of the property and some sparse trees here and there, but for the most part it is kind of open, high grassland. And there's trees around on the neighbors' properties and stuff, and the forest is right there. But the fire itself was kind of very spotty. Like, like our property, it burned. It didn't burn all the trees because it was a lot of the trees that were by themselves in the middle of all the grass. It would just burn the grass, and it wasn't enough of the grass to catch the tree on fire, right?
Okay.
But our barn and our barnyard were all like, old redwood picket fence with railroad ties and telephone poles, and like it was an old barn setup, right? So all that obviously caught fire real quick from the grass.
Right.
But there's other people, that you go 2 properties over, and it burned every tree on their whole property, and then the guy in between us, nothing, right? So it was just kind of hit and miss the way that it, just mazed its way through the land. But yeah, 20 years later now, you can tell where it was, because there's not a lot of large growth trees, but it's very green. Things, are growing back.
Good. And okay, so when you graduated from high school, first of all, when you were in high school, did you were in band, that kind of stuff, tennis? Did you attend social activities like the dances and that kind of thing?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I went pretty much everything. And then I had a group of friends that we always hung out with. There's this interesting because, like I said, my daily driver was a '71 4-wheel drive Chevy Suburban. Not a lot of those around even back then. And out of all, just random luck, there's another guy at the high school that I hung out with, Ryan, as well, and he had the exact same vehicle, but a 72. He had a 72 Chevy Suburban. And then another guy, Dusty, had a 72 Blazer. And we were literally the only 3 people at the school that had any kind of truck or 4-wheel drive. So we hung out, it's funny because there was parking spots that weren't really parking spots. They used to be, and then they like poured these concrete slabs to put like some electrical gear and a telephone pole and guide wires and stuff. And we would actually park there because we could drive over the curb, and everyone just knew that's where they park, and no one else even attempted to park there. So that was like all parking spots, right?
Nice. Nice.
But yeah, I'd get up and band usually was the first thing in the morning. That was your 0-hour class. So I'd usually be leaving the house at like 6 in the morning, and I'd usually be gone for a good 12 hours after school's over. And, in the springtime, you'd have tennis. Other times I'd just be hanging out with friends or shooting some basketball hoops or, whatever.
Okay. After high school, did you attend college?
Yeah, so I moved down to Tucson to go to U of A. I had a scholarship, and I got into the engineering school at U of A. And I pretty much I didn't do any more. I didn't do tennis. I didn't do any more band stuff. Just because I had fun with it, and I didn't want to. I was like, I don't feel like continuing them,
And how did you get involved with off-roading? I mean, to where you started, doing more than just running around on the property.
So I still had my Suburban, and that was my, college vehicle. And I met a couple other friends that they had, four-wheel drive. So we would go out in the desert and go exploring in random places. And this was, 2000. And at that time, rock crawling itself was relatively new. So, it's still a lot of just two-track forest roads, whatever. But we'd go out and go exploring and have a good time. And I think it was 2002, maybe 2003. A group of us started an off-road club at U of A called Arizona Wildcat Off Road. And the idea of it was, well, at least if you go out into the desert and you get stuck, you have some buddies to come get you unstuck, right?
Right.
Or just someone to go with. And it was involved with that for quite a while, and met a lot of cool people. And actually, I met Kaylee way back then. And it was a good time. And that's kind of when I started to get involved into rock crawling about the end of college.
And that was because of the 4-wheel drive club?
Yeah. I like the technical stuff, which, Suburban isn't really the prime vehicle for that.
No, but you had to pick a line.
Yeah. We'd go run some trails that were pretty tough, and it was always just fun,
Right.
I tried to go out almost every weekend in college, go somewhere, because there's a couple real close places that are, right at the edge of town. You could drive a half hour and you're in 4-wheel drive and having a good time. So
that is a nice thing about Arizona.
Yeah. Yep. So right after graduating from college is when I got my YJ that eventually became my buggy, which before I even bought it, I knew whatever I was buying was going to be turned into a buggy. And that's when I, got real big into the rock crawling.
And at what point did it start getting cut up and transformed?
Well, funny thing, I bought it and I had axles already built, sitting in the garage, ready to go. I didn't know what I was going to do yet for suspension and transportation, but I was like, I know, I'm going to put a Dana 60s under this thing and chromoly shafts and spools, and I just want it to be pretty robust. So I already had all that stuff, and a YJ came out for sale in California, and I bought it from the guy. Drove out there to get it and brought it back, and I was like, you know what, before I cut this thing apart, I want to just take it out and wheel it once or twice. Well, I took it out once or twice, and I had so much fun with it, totally stock. I mean, as stock as you can get. That, it wasn't stock. The guy had put like a set of 31 1050 15s on the stock Jeep wheels, and and it was open diffs, leaf spring YJ, no lift, and I ended up wheeling that thing for a year, totally stock, just to see what it could do. Because people would be like, "Oh, you can't run that trick." I'm like, well, let's go find out. So, and this is when I had met some of the Arizona Undertakers guys, and out in Florence, which is that was one of the first rock crawling places in Arizona, with all of its trails. And one of the famous trails out there is Axle Alley. Well, one day we were sitting there, wondering, what could we go run that I could do? And I said, I want to try Axle Alley. And they were like, no way. And I was like, how about this? If I can get to the first fall unassisted, I didn't have a winch on it, nothing. It was just, I had 4 spare axle shafts, front and rear drive shafts, and a spare tire and tools. I was like, that way I can fix it, whatever, but I don't have a winch. I don't, whatever. We're just gonna go. And they said, if you can get to the first fall unassisted, we'll winch you up the fall and we'll run the rest of the trail. And I did. And they're like, holy crap, that's insane. I can't believe someone, and that was actually the only assistance I needed on the whole trail, was winching up that fall. All the other obstacles, bone stock, open YJ on 31s. Like,
Nice.
and then, later on, we'd go run that in our buggies, 5 years down the road. And I'd think, how did I drive this thing into this trail? Like, now I'm on, 40s with link suspension, driving into the same trail going, was I nuts? Or like,
You didn't know any better.
yeah, right. But it was just fun to, just see what you could do in a totally stock, no lockers, no anything. And, it was just fun. So then finally one day I was like, okay, that's enough. And it was about a year later. And that's when I tore it all apart, cut it up, basically almost did an entire tube chassis. I just kept the center frame rails as my baseline to build off of, and chopped the tub. There wasn't much left of it after that.
Right. And then you started racing it.
Yeah. Then, so when you had started Dirt Riot, I saw it and I was like, oh, that'd be kind of fun, but a YJ buggy with a stock Jeep 4-cylinder, it's not gonna be fast. There's no way, because there's, all the guys that I went wheeling with had similar rigs, but they all had V8s, because who didn't have a buggy with a V8?
Right.
So the first race that you had that was nearby was in Tucson, and I had come out to just help with, if someone rolled over on course, whatever. Okay. Well, then the next one was in Moab, and I was like, I think I'm just going to go just to see, right? Because, I liked seeing how fast I could go up trails, smoothly and without winching and stuff like that. But Moab, race course, not as hard of obstacles. Okay. And so I showed up with my rig, and it was still on leaf springs at the time. And I remember I broke a leaf spring like the moment I started the race. And by the end of the race, I won by a lot. And I was like, okay, well, maybe I'll try it again, even though the next one's in Congress or wherever it was. And I was like, that's more open desert. Obviously, guys with bigger motors are going to be way faster. So I came to that one and won, and then expand that over the course of the next year and a half, and I had won 10 Dirt Riots in a row in trail class, which was anyone with whatever, just your normal buggy back then, which was 40s V8 coilovers or links with coils, or whatever people built at the time.
Right.
And I was like, I don't know how I'm winning, but I am. So then it was after the first year, when I had won, I don't know, 4 of them or something, and won the championship, that I had got with Brian Turner, who at the time was at ADS, and talked to him about a partnership, and Artie and Nate at Artec, and we ended up changing my rig over to links and coilovers. And I swapped the rear axle out to a 14 bolt because I had broke the 60 trail wheeling, in the off season, doing fun stuff. And from then on, it was like, if I didn't win, I was pretty disappointed.
Which you weren't disappointed very often.
No, not very often, but it did happen. I mean, I raced, there's a lot of guys that are racing Legends Class 4800 Ultra 4 right now that I raced against, and a lot of guys that did race and have now retired from it. And it was a good time with all those guys, because I mean, that was when the Legends class actually kind of started, and guys started building purpose-built Legends cars, and they'd have 600-700 horsepower, and I'm here with 125 horsepower stock Jeep 4-cylinder.
Right.
And sometimes they would get pretty pissed when they'd win, but it was more of it all depended on the more open courses. Obviously, I'd have my hands full trying to beat them. But on the technical courses where motors didn't matter, like Moab or in the trees in Oklahoma, that's where I knew I could hold my own, because all that horsepower didn't matter at that point.
Right. And I think having the 4-cylinder, though, you could run that thing like at redline, and you couldn't break anything.
True. I had some cheater stuff too, because I had an Atlas 4-speed. So I had two to one gears in the main case and they were race gears. So I would run it in 2 to 1 all the time because I had overdrive and 410s in the axle. So running it in 2 to 1, it was like 1 to 1 with 820s, and it gave me more gearing, which helped.
Right. I can remember Oklahoma, and one of the teams just couldn't believe, they were driving a 4800 car, and they couldn't believe that you just checked out on them. They thought they were doing really good because they caught up with you. And I remember you saying, "Oh yeah, I let them start to catch up because I wanted to see what they had, because my course is switched back, so you could see the guys, 100, 200 yards behind you because they'd be on the trail with a row of trees in between, and or some rocks or something like that. So you let them get around you, and then they made a mistake, and then you checked out on them, and they were only delayed, a couple of seconds, and they were like, Ryan must have cheated. And I'm like, no, there's no way, because except for that one lap where they caught you, which, basically, you kind of let them catch you, or it appeared that way.
Clearly, but I know who it was. It was actually the Maddens.
Yep.
The white Jimmy's car. The very cool guys. After talking to them after that race, and racing with them the rest of the couple of seasons, and seeing them at King of the Hammers, good friends. But I was new at that one because I'm going to step back a second, because so I had no intention ever of racing Central Dirt Riot, because it was a lot of driving. Because all the races were Oklahoma, Central Texas, somewhere around there, and that's 1,000 miles one way for me. And I was already racing Southwest and Mountain Dirt Riots, right? So picking up 3 more races, that's 10 races in a year. That's a lot. Especially, I'm just an everyday guy. I don't have huge sponsorships. I don't do it as my job. And that year was the year that Haley wanted to race with me. So the week before the first Central race of the year, which was in Austin, Texas, was the Dirt Riot in Congress. And that was her first time ever being in the race car with me. And I rolled it while I was in the lead. And I mean, I had put it on cruise control at that point. Like, I got it, just take it easy. And I just hit a rut in a wash just wrong and biked it up. And I thought I had it saved, but I was trying to avoid hitting some stuff while saving it. There was some cholla and a couple big rocks, and I ended up laying it over on the passenger side, and ended up jumping out. She stayed in the car, and I winched it back over real quick and checked my oil, because I lost some out of the breather, and it was fine. But I jumped back in, strapped back in, and took off, and ended up racing all the way back into second, right between Robbie Flandreau and Cade Rod. And they were both just like, how did he come all the way back from that many minutes down, And the whole drive home, I was just pissed, because I knew I had that race won. Well, Kaylee had gone to grad school in Austin, and she's like, well, why don't we just go to Austin next weekend and you can go get a win there? And I was like, oh, that's a lot of driving. I got to re-prep the car. I guess. So we went to Austin, and I had won that race by like 7 seconds. It was a mud race. All those were like, who's this Southwest guy? He doesn't even know what mud and trees are. And I ended up winning it. So they were like, oh crap. So that started now I've won the first race. We got to go to the second one. So that's when we went to Oklahoma. Well, in Oklahoma there, obviously I wanted to win again, and it was lots of rain, mud, rocks, trees. And I had started second to last, and the Maddens had started right behind me. And on the first lap, I hit the water crossing too hard, and I got my distributor like absolutely soaked. And I was running on 3 cylinders then. So if this 4 cylinders wasn't bad enough, I was on 3. And they were slowly catching me. And I was just trying to keep moving, you know. And I knew I was wounded. So when they caught me, I just kind of, you know, I did the right thing, you know, move out of their way, let them go. You know, my stuff's not like you always said, if you're caught from behind, you're already beat. So,
right.
I moved over, they went. And as soon as I moved over, I got the 4th cylinder back. I was like, dang it. So, I mean, instantly I was right on their butt, and I followed them for a lap and a half because they were moving pretty good. We were both passing cars here and there. And like you said, the second they made a mistake, I went for it and passed them. And once I passed them, I saw them for like 2 turns and then never saw them again. And that's when after the race, they were like, there is no way that 4-cylinder is that fast. And it wasn't a matter of the motor. It was, I had done extensive work with the guy at ADS to make sure that thing could take some stuff suspension wise, because I needed to be able to keep momentum up was the biggest thing, because I didn't have a lot of acceleration. And I remember that was also the race you gave me 2 white flags because I went too fast. Because the format for the dirt riots were, as soon as, you know, you did the math and said, okay, well, when he finishes his next lap, it's going to be after the 1 or 1.5 hour time for the race. So we're going to give the white flag now, and the next time he comes around, it'll be, you know, 1 hour and 31 minutes, and we'll give him the checkered flag. Well, I had lost my radio too, because it had got soaked from all the water crossings. So I had no idea how far ahead I was in first. I knew I was in first, but I didn't know how much time I had. And like you said, you can see behind you, but not super far. So I knew I had to beat Rodney by 30 seconds. Well, I didn't know where he was. So I was just driving that thing to the limit because I wanted to win. And you gave me a white flag, and I railed that thing for all it was worth, thinking this is the last lap. This is it. And then I came around to the finish, and you gave me another white flag, and I threw my arms up like, what the hell?
Because you were so dang fast on that last one.
Yeah,
you beat your hour by like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I remember that because my lap time that was like 45 seconds faster than any other lap I ran the rest of the day.
Yep. And
I was like, dang it. So then I had to do it. So then I railed it for another lap because I was like, I don't know where he's at, you know. It was funny because then I remember Josh even telling me, like, they were wondering, like, there's no way he had to have cut course somewhere or whatever, you know, which, I mean, I get it. It was, you know, but once they were like, no, he hit this spot on the course and that spot on the course, and so has a picture of him there and here, and I saw him come through there, and they were like, damn, okay.
Because, that's one of the things that we could tell at Dirt Riot, guys would get faster as the race come on, but it would only be a few seconds every lap.
Yeah.
And anytime somebody beat their lap by their preceding lap or all their averages by more than 20, 25, 30 seconds, it raises a red flag. And, if you clipped off 2 or 3 minutes, it was, I'm calling you a cheater, and there's some guys that I did that with, they may have won, but I'd tell them later, I said, I know you cheated because there's no way you picked off 2 or 3 minutes. Well, you picked off quite a bit of time, but
yeah,
there wasn't a place out there that you could clip off that much time.
Yeah. I remember the one spot that you could is where I think where Josh was taking pictures, and he was
Yep.
like,
Well,
nope. He goes, why was there taking pictures? Because that was the only place that you could have tried to cut across.
right, and that's where he knew some of those UTV drivers were going to do that, because after the pre-run he went out to check the course, the markings and stuff, and saw everybody, all the UTVs had taken that shortcut. So he goes, well, I'm going to stand there, that way they can't. And
Yeah.
that really, the first UTV comes around the corner, and I'm not going to mention names, but all of a sudden they check up and like, oh dang, because they almost blew the whole course by
Yeah.
by doing that.
No, going out there, all those guys in the Central Series were real good guys, and that was actually a lot of fun racing against them, because they had, I mean, not as many, but they had quite a handful of cars, but pretty much all of them were guys that raced the Ultra 4 Series too. Not just, they weren't just trail rigs. They were a lot of legends cars out there.
Correct. Yep. And that
But
was the whole idea behind Dirt Ride
yeah,
anyway, was to give those guys a place to race and hone their skills, so they when they went to KOH or Ultra 4, that they knew how to finish a race.
yeah,
You know.
you know, but against the Southwest and Mountain, a lot of it, there was a lot of trail rigs. Especially in the Mountain Series with all the Jimmy's cars and stuff, and the guys up there in the Four Corners area. I remember the one race, there was like 22 of us in the trail class of unlimited, and it was like, whoa, okay.
Yeah, that's probably there in Cortez.
Yeah, that's where it was.
Yeah, that was a good racetrack too. I
Yeah,
loved the spectators. There was that handful of local natives that would come out and cheer out in the middle of nowhere, and the
yep.
photographs from that corner was just hilarious.
Oh yeah.
So let's talk about how you became Ryan Miller / Campbell.
Well, that was racing dirt ride.
Okay.
Because I refused to lose. No, but
But
no,
your association with the Campbells.
yeah. So I think it was 2010. 2009 was like the first like big year out at KOH, and Shannon had won it in 2008. And some of the Undertakers guys, knew who Shannon were. They helped him, go out and test his new car, which back then was, bypass air shocks and super tiny little, single seat rockcrawler moon buggy looking thing. And then he built his IFS car in 2009. And I knew some of the guys that were helping him then. And then in 10, they were like, hey, do you think you could come help us pit for hammers? Okay. So I went out, still went out to KOH with my buggy and was mainly just hanging out and trail wheeling with all the guys. And then we, go over and see if they needed anything, and pretty much just there for race day to help pit. Well, after that, in 2010, Shannon had built his little Volkswagen hood 2-seat. I think it was a Pro Mod car at the time.
Right.
And he's like, oh, I want to take the kids out, take them trail wheeling. They need to learn how to drive rocks and see lines and blah, blah, blah. So right after KOH in 2010, then he's like, yeah, put together a trail run, and I'll, this is to the guys that I knew. And so they put together a run, and I was out there, and it just so happened they were like, we're going to follow Ryan today. Okay. So I was leading, and I put them right behind me. So it was Bailey driving and waiting passengers, and Shannon was riding with me. He was riding with, some other guys, Rob and whoever else was there. And he was just jumping in with whoever. But, he told him, he's like, hey, just pay attention, watch what he does, learn. Why did he take that line? Yada, yada. Okay. So we wheeled and we went out to one of our little locations, and it's big boy stuff. It's not, these aren't trails that anyone can go run just because you got a buggy.
Right.
And Bailey was barely old enough to reach the pedals. What was this, 2010? So she was 13 maybe. And it was a buggy built for, I think, Nick, because that was what Nick and Rob McKinney raced in the Hammers that year. And drove everything except for, it was on the last day we were there, last obstacle, last trail. And she struggled a little bit, and Shannon said, okay, well, that's enough. Jump out of the driver's seat, let Waylon jump in. And Waylon, I was trying to tell her, like, it was one of those obstacles where it's all in the feel, and you had to bump it. It was a bump waterfall. And once you bumped it, you're almost rolling. And right at the right time, you needed to turn. And within like a 6-inch area going up it. And she was right there, but just couldn't get it. And Waylon did it in one shot. And that kind of got her a little angry. Bro got it, on the first shot, whatever. And so, we had a good time, and they learned a lot, obviously. And, that's what he wanted them to do was, learn how to pick a line and see the line and, throttle control. And, because, it's easy to go out and break something, but, just be easy on the equipment and get through it. And shortly after that weekend, one of the guys that had set up that run that knew Shannon, he called me and he said, hey, is it all right if I give Shannon your phone number if he wants to talk to you? I was like, yeah, no problem. And Shannon called and said, hey, we need a spotter for We Rock for the year. Would you spot for my brother, Nick? And I said, yeah, sure. And he's like, yeah, you just come with us. We'll take care of you. And hopefully it works good. Oh, okay. Well, the first one was in Tucson, so that was easy. And I came out and I spotted for Nick, and we ended up winning all but one event that year and winning the championship. And at the end of the year, Shannon was like, hey, you want to come help us for Hammers next year? And I was like, yeah, sure. So I helped him with Hammers, a lot with logistic stuff for race day. Like where to pit, where to put certain parts and stuff like that. And, how much fuel we're going to take, here and there. And after that, he's, hey, you want to come desert racing with us? This was at the start of 2011. It's a 4-wheel drive class 1 car. So we went and raced, Vegas to Reno and stuff. And so that was 2011. And then shortly after that is when he built the Top Truck Challenge car to go to the 20th anniversary. That was in 2012. And then he said, hey, I want to get Waylon qualified for King of the Hammers. You want to co-drive with him? Yeah, sure. So that's when I started co-driving for Waylon, and then we built him that IFS car, and it's kind of all history from there. It's like built him that IFS car, co-drove with him for a while until Bailey started racing, and then co-drove with her, and then Waylon ended up in the single seat car, and now here we are, right?
Yep. I told you the other day that I was going to be interviewing Bailey the same day as you, but before you. And it was funny because when I text, I said, yeah, I'm interviewing Bailey. And you go, my Bailey? And I could just see the, I could hear you saying that in your voice. And, I get taking, I don't say ownership. That's not the right word, but you take that like responsibility for somebody,
Yeah.
and you have done that. And, we talked with her about that KOH run where you guys were in first place and the water pump broke.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk and get your feelings on all of that,
That,
especially
that
that race.
Obviously, anytime I'm in the car with her, I want her to win. And I want her to do good because I know she can.
Right.
And she wants to do good. And there was a lot leading up to that. The previous year, she had put her car on the podium twice. She hasn't won an Ultra 4 race, but she's been dang close. She's qualified first a couple times, and she won a couple dirt riots, and she's done the Wee Rock stuff, but not Ultra 4. But I was like, I know the one thing. She's like, I want to win King of the Hammers, right? And I want to win King of the Hammers with her, So that race, we're not really worried about anyone else. We just want to run our pace, what we think is a winning pace. And we knew we were doing good. We'd caught a bunch of cars on the first lap in the desert and passed them. Her car works phenomenal out in the desert. And that's, she feels comfortable out there, but she also feels comfortable in the rocks. And once we got to lap 2, it was just kind of like, all right, we got to just get through this lap. And we got through the lap, and we did. I'm in my head, I'm pretty, I don't know what to say. Like, I keep track of where we are.
It's that math thing.
Like, yeah, it's the math thing. So I'm like, we've passed a ton of people. Like, we're definitely in the top 5, right? And coming in out of the last rock trail, I can't say last rock trail because you still had to go down Resolution and back door, but there was, Shearer pulled over on the side, leaving the last rock trail there. Him and Berger were, arms up, fist pumping us, cheering us on as we went by. And I was like, they obviously just got out of their car and they're cheering us on like, go, go, go. And just before that, we had passed Wayne and Cameron, who were out changing a tire, which we were battling with them in the rocks pretty much all of lap 2, going back and forth. And we knew we had a good pace going. We had already passed, like I said, a whole bunch of cars, and there was only a handful of them left in front of us. And then as soon as we topped Resolution, JP was pulled over right there. And I was like, gosh, we got to be in like the top 3 now. And when we pulled into main pit at the end of lap 2, our first pit stop, because her car has a huge fuel tank. We can almost run the whole race. But we just stop at the end of lap 2, take some fuel just to make sure we don't run out. And I had asked, are there fuel in the car? And then, people come, hey, you need a water, you need a rag or anything. And I kind of mouthed to the guy on my side of the car, like, are we in first? And I actually said it. And it caught Bailey's attention because she heard it on the intercom, I think. And he said, yeah, you guys are in first. And that's when it set in holy crap, we are in first. Like, I knew we were doing good. And she kind of started to get a tear in her eye. And we pulled out to go through the start finish line and start our last lap. And I remember seeing Emily Miller come out of the media tent right there and came out to the start finish line as we were pulling out of the pit and cheered her on. And we're like, okay, well, one more lap, here we go. And we took off on that last lap, and they had radioed to us like, hey, just so you know, second place car through is Cameron, and he's this many minutes behind you physically. And I already knew in my head, okay, well, we started behind him by this far, so we have this many minutes on corrected time ahead of him. You're fine. Just stay in front of him physically, and by the time we get to the rocks, and I know you got it, and we entered that desert section, and I don't know what flipped, but Bailey was running probably 15 miles an hour faster than we did the first 2 laps, and we were flying pretty good, and it just felt comfortable. We were just on cruise control, but going much faster, And we got to the end of the lake bed, going across Emerson over by the Marine base line. I'm like, and I just said to her, all right, just one more rock loop. you already ran it perfect on the second lap, just one more lap. And as soon as we hit the little trail going up off the lake bed, she goes, oh crap, I lost a belt. And I was like, no biggie. So she pulled over. And one thing is, we don't like to run our cars too hard across the lake bed, because it's pretty, when you zing them pretty hard, it takes its toll on some stuff. But, we actually went the same speed across the lake bed as we did across the desert. We were like 100, 105. That was pretty much it.
Okay.
I got out thinking, I'm just going to grab this belt and stick a belt on. And when I went to put the belt on the car, the whole water pump pulley moved, and I went, oh crap, because that's when I saw the whole pulley was broken. And that was like, at that moment, I was like, how do I tell Bailey that her race is over? Like this is going to crush her. And I walked back up to the side of the car and I said, Bailey, we're done. And she started to get a good tear in her eye. And she's like, no. And I was like, the water pump pulley's broke. And it was just like, no, we weren't done. Like I said, we're not done. We're going to get a water pump. We're going to get this fixed and we're going to get to the finish line. But sorry, you're not going to win this one,
Right.
That was tough. That was tough. Because, it's like anyone says, like, oh yeah, I was leading until this. It's never guaranteed. I just knew that she wasn't going to do anything, to hurt the car, and she wasn't going to get us screwed up on the last lap. It's just one of those things that's out of your control, and it just happened,
Yeah.
And it wrong time for her, So we hung out there for a while and had some laughs and waited for a water pump to show up, because she had a pretty good lead. Where we were was on, like I said, that little rocky, narrow 2-track going up the side of the mountain, it's a pretty sketch spot to be in. There's not really anywhere to pull off to the side. So I had backed up the car because, we had no belts. We had no steering, which is really hard with a rack.
Yes.
Because I have the racks. The only car that got by us while we were still up on the mountain after all that was Cameron and Wayne. And I had rolled the car back down off of the side of the hill there onto the flat at the edge of the lake bed, so that we weren't in a sketchy spot there. And we waited for Shannon to come with a water pump, because that's such a far ways from main pit, that we had to wait for him to get to main pit and then drive all the way out to where we were. It was like an hour and 45 minutes or something. We were sitting out there. We were just, some of the Marines were watching the race, and we went over and talked to them, and, just checked over the car a couple times, just waiting. And then it came, and we threw the water pump on it and poured some water in it and took off. And she picked up right where she was before the water pump issue, and she drove a completely flawless third lap through the rocks, and we got to the finish. But it wasn't the finish that she was looking for.
Right. Yeah, she mentioned that was a heartbreaker for her.
Oh yeah, that was a heartbreaker, but I think that also, you can tell yourself, I can win this race, but I think that really showed her she could win that race,
Right.
And the following year, she was pregnant with their kid, and I drove her car, and I know that she wanted to be in that car and win that race, that was when she asked me to drive the car for her. Of course I'll drive the car for her, but I was more disappointed that her and I weren't going to be able to go win the race,
Right. So let's talk about you and Kaylee, and how I love when Kaylee's competing at the Rebelle, and I get texts from you about what's happening scoring wise. Because most of the time I'm not watching the scoring, or,
Yeah.
I'm watching the tracking, like people at home are, because I'm sitting there waiting to go, you know, herd in or make sure everybody gets back to camp, but I got to wait till everybody gets past me before I can go start doing that. And I always enjoy your text to me, like, hey, somebody has gone rogue. I won't mention names or numbers, but it's always funny getting those. What is it like sitting at home and watching your wife on the internet compete?
Uh, I think it takes years off of your life. No, her and her group of girlfriends, they go out and practice and help each other, and that just happened this year. She didn't go this year. She was planning on it and then decided not to. But it's very nerve wracking because you don't know what they're doing. You don't know what they're thinking. You're just waiting on them to get to the next checkpoint, and you're like looking on the tracker of how they get there. And when they take a wrong turn, you're like, no, don't go that way, go the other way. Or the green and the blue checkpoints, or there's flags out there, but the black ones aren't marked. So when they get really close to it, but they stop not close enough, you're like, no, go further. it's and you do that 200 times because that's how many checkpoints they have over the course of a week. And it's just it's fun to watch, but you just want them to do so well that every time the tracker's moving, you're like, go in the right direction. On.
Yeah, that's more so the tracker. I watch the scoring myself. That way I know, like when specific areas are done and we can start pulling flags when the girls have all gone past that, and they've got that next green, so all the blues and greens before that can be pulled, that kind of thing. And it's I don't watch the scoring so much to see who's in the lead,
Yeah.
but just to try to help play quarterback out there with the course team, which we have a really great course team. Everybody gets it, and we've had basically the same team from the for 7 years now, and so it makes it really easy. But that watching that scoring really helps in doing that, and I can imagine that it must be nerve-wracking for the husbands at home watching it.
Oh yeah, you wear out the refresh button. refresh. But you got to have two screens going, because you got to have tracking on one that you're refreshing on, and then you got to have the scoring page on the other. When they get closer, you're just hitting refresh to see if they've scored it yet. Especially on the greens and the blues, it's a set score. So once they get to it, you're like kind of, it's not a gimme per se because there's trick ones out there, but you're just waiting on the score to populate at that time. But the blacks, you're like hitting refresh to see, like, I hope they didn't click it already because they need to get closer, and just waiting to see if that score pops up and how good it is.
Right. And the blues, where they do the double blues within sight of each other, but just outside of the scoring rings.
Yeah.
That's the good teams that are really experienced, understand, they don't just go, oh, there's our blue, and assume it's the first one. They know where they're going, and they'll drive right to the one that they want. But it's kind of interesting watching the girls that, they get to those blues and they're like, okay, now which one is ours? Because it's almost like they forgot where they were supposed to go. And they don't have the electronics that we have at home or watching on, while we're out there.
No.
So it's pretty difficult. It's not, everybody thinks it's easy, and it is by no way easy at all.
No, I always say I would love to do that rally because it seems super fun to me, but it's for women only. So, but I like going out, and one of the other ladies that does it, Laura Monless, her husband Britton, and we like to go out and we set practice courses for them. And some of the girls will fly in or drive over from California or whatever, and they get a group of them together and have a little weekend, and we'll set up a course for them and send them out on their way as if it was a real rally day, and equipped with blues near each other. And I'll even stick random flags that aren't anybody's checkpoints out there.
Right.
Just for fun. And they're like, we saw that and we're like, oh, we're here. And then we're like, wait a minute, we're not here. And like, are you sure? Well, maybe we should drive a little further up around this corner and see. And then they come around the corner and they see there's another, and they're like, no, that's the one. Okay. Every now and then I can get them, but most of them are kind of veterans, and it's very hard to trick them.
Right. And now Emily is throwing out different, each year they add something different just to not break the monotony, but to throw something into the works that maybe the girls haven't had a chance to practice.
Yeah. It's funny because this year she did checkpoints that you can do in any order.
Like on certain days.
On certain days.
Right.
Only certain too. And actually, Kaylee and Tara Lynn practiced that before.
Nice.
I actually, the one year that they were in Johnson Valley when it was flooded and they were going to have night checkpoints and they didn't do it, they had practiced that too. Night checkpoints. So they, it's, like, what if she does this or what if she does that? It's like, just, trying to give them what ifs so they could think through different scenarios. Not that that would be what she does. She could do something totally different, but just to not be the same.
Right.
Like I would do checkpoints where they would have to drive past the current one and then go back. Like, well, that doesn't make sense because your 12 is before your 11. And I'm like, oh, is it? As they're, plotting it. Like, well, if we're going down the road this way, the 12 is going to be before the 11. Okay.
Yeah, so.
Or I would give them one where it's like a super far distance from a green or a blue to a black, and then make a green or a blue closer to the black on the opposite side to see who would try to get it just driving straight to it, or who would try to drive straight past it and then backtrack. Like your margin of error is shorter when you're navigating from a closer distance,
Right.
Just to see who does what. Because they're, when I would do stuff like that, some of them would do it straight from the previous one and nail it, and other ones would go straight past and come back and also nail it. So,
Yeah. So then let's talk about the flat fender run.
Oh, the Go Devil run. Yeah,
Go Devil run. There you go.
Super, super fun. I know you had interviewed Ian because you had asked me about what to ask Ian about.
Yep.
Yeah, it's like I said, going all the way back to my parents' property up in the White Mountains. That was like one of the first vehicles I drove was a flat fender. My dad's had them ever since then, so I've always loved them. And right before Kaylee and I got married, I'd come across a couple of them for sale, and we were actually getting ready to go up to the White Mountains because her folks also have a place up there. We were going up there to do some wedding planning stuff because that's where we were going to get married. And one of her friends messaged her and said, hey, family friend has these Jeeps. They're going to put them for sale. Maybe Ryan knows someone that would be interested in buying them. And I saw him and I was like, yeah, me, I'm interested in buying them. Because it was one of them was the Jeep that we currently own, the flat fender 46 Willys, and it's a CJ2A, and they had it, and it was just kind of a, it kind of wants to run, but it doesn't run. like we can get it to crank over, and it kind of starts and then dies, and it makes a bunch of noise and it smokes real bad. But it's got a title. Okay. And I went and I looked at it and I bought it and I loaded it on the trailer under its own power I poured some gas in the carburetor and got it running just long enough to scoot it up onto the trailer real quick. And I took it home and I had it running that next week. The problem is the fuel tank had condensated so much just by sitting for too many years. The fuel was old and it was like a third water.
Yeah, cars don't like to run that way.
Yeah, no. And those things actually have drains on the fuel tank. So I just unscrewed the drained it, poured new fuel in it, and I've been driving it since. But, because we were going up, like I said, to do some wedding planning stuff. So we actually ended up deciding that we would drive that in our wedding. So it was our wedding vehicle. But ever since then, it's just we love it, and we love taking it out and driving around it. It's super fun because it's not anything that's that's new and fancy, and you drive down the highway for hours, and it's old and it's pretty just basic everything. But we actually, like I said, have a blast doing it. The first Go Devil run that Ian did was 2020, and Kaylee went with me. The two of us, a little flat fender Jeep with all of our gear for camping.
And you guys did everything retro. I mean, clothing that you wore, all that kind of stuff. And in fact, you guys did everything with black and white photos.
Big black and white photos. You make the rig like looks original. Like everyone's got a little bit of something done. Like different tire sizes are probably the biggest thing. But all of our Jeeps are like no lifts. No axle swaps, no engine swaps. They're all the original flathead 4-cylinder motors. No newer radial tires. They're all the old, 600, 700, 15, 16 bias plies, factory wheels, stuff like that, just to make it look like it's straight out of 1950.
That's awesome. It's awesome. I hope to do that someday.
Yeah, it is a blast. We actually just, owning one and us, before the first Go Devil run anyway, we had one and we'd be up at the cabin riding around in it and whatever. And knowing Bailey and Brian Crofts, they were like, oh yeah, those things seem kind of cool, whatever. Well, one weekend they were up north there too. And I said, swing on by and we'll go for a cruise through the forest. So Brian at that time had his JL. And, we had my dad's flat fender and my flat fender and a brand new JL. And we went out cruising through the forest. And, I kind of convinced him, hey, drive it. See if you like it, whatever. And he was like, nah. I finally got Bailey to ride with me. And Bailey's like, oh, that was so much fun. Brian, you got to drive it. And Brian, and he's like, oh, that's so much fun. They left from our place and headed home, and Bailey was already texting me saying, Brian has me searching for flat fender Jeeps now because he wants one.
Sweet.
Before the Go Devil run, he had bought one, and then he bought his dad Art one too. And both of them have come on every Go Devil run, and it's just a blast. Obviously Brian has his own Ultra 4 car, but we've both been in Ultra 4 cars and stuff, 800 horsepower and doing 100 miles an hour across the desert. But you get in these little flat fender Jeeps and we're like, this is the most fun you could have. Like, this is just a blast.
Right. I used to have a 53 M38A1, the old CJ5 military.
Yep.
And I had more fun driving that thing with the manual steering, 25, 27 axles, on 31. Well, I had 31-inch tires. Started with the.
Those are illegal.
They are for the run, yes. But
yeah.
I had moved up to those because I had the Armstrong True Tracks on there that were like a 30-inch or something. They were like an 1150 15 or something, and they were so out of round that you couldn't drive it over 40 miles an hour because the thing would just try to shake itself to death.
Yeah. That's
So I threw some 31s on it.
Now the motor in that thing, Eric Fillar would say that is what he calls overhead valvery, which is also illegal.
Well, mine had the Oddfire V6 Buick in
Oh,
it, so it was really illegal.
yeah,
And an SM465. So yeah, but it
yeah.
was so much fun.
Now 40 miles an hour, most people say you can't go that fast in a stock flat fender because that's what the internet says.
Well, we all know how accurate the internet can be. It's like 65-degree steering.
Yeah.
On a Toyota.
Yeah. Not physically possible.
Or mathematically.
The best way is you flip your protractor over. That way it's a higher number.
There you go. I always love those when somebody comes on and says something and you come on as the fact checker and go, yeah, no, not really. And then they want to argue.
Well, I posted, so many people tag me the second someone claims they have all these degrees of steering, and I'm like, stop tagging me. But easiest way to increase your steering angle is to claim you have more than you do on the internet.
True enough.
Best way.
So let's talk about the future. What's in the future for the Millers?
I'm not really sure, but so obviously you brought up the wife doing the Rebel Rally, and we had built Haley a Jeep TJ for the second Rebel Rally, and she won with that with Tara Lynn, and they did a couple more in it, and we had done Fury Road at Trail Hero a couple times, and we had won in the little TJ with that, and we did Nevada Trophy a couple times. That was real fun. But then we had our baby 16 months ago, and that changes things. The TJ really didn't. It's really not a family vehicle,
Right.
It's hard. I mean, it can be. The problem is we also have a large dog too, and we love to take him places, but you can't fit a baby and a 100-pound dog and all your gear and stuff in a TJ. It's a little much to ask.
Right.
So, right when we knew we were going to have the kid, we bought a new JL, and that's what Kaylee had rallied with Tara Lynn the last time she went, and they won in that. But we sold the TJ to some friends out of Phoenix. I think Mike and Ashley Bradley.
Right.
And we were just so happy that someone bought it that was going to use it for how it was built, because I mean, you've seen that thing many times. It's a sleeper, and it's not like a hardcore rock crawler or anything like that. It's just a Jeep that looks like a street Jeep, but it can cruise across the desert pretty good. It can also rock crawl some moderate trails pretty good. It was only on 33-inch tires, but I wheeled it out at Hammers a couple times with Harry, which was funny because he had that little tracker that Jesse Haynes built, on 37s, that pretty cool little rig that could work real well. And some of the guys that were coming on the trail were all in 37 and 39 and 40-inch tire buggies and truggies, and they're looking at me like, Harry, is that guy really gonna make it? And I'm like, Harry, are you sure you're inviting me on the right run? Like, these rigs are got a lot more tire than I got, and obviously don't give a crap about the body. I don't want to dent, because I had the hard top, full hard doors on it, because it's out at the Hammers. I was like, I don't want to be freezing driving around, and I don't want to have to clean the inside of it when I get home. And he's like, no, you're going to be fine. And we drove up, I think it was Boulder Dash, and we get all the way to the top, and we turned around, and Harry's like, see, I told you you weren't the one to worry about. He's like, they're all down there stuck. um, but there were some spots where I was, I had to work at it. Little 33-inch tires. That's not the easiest trail, but the thing worked really well. It had, lockers front and back and chromoly axle shafts, and it had ADS shocks. A couple times we'd go out to check out the race course on other days of racing besides the 4400s, and Shannon rode with me, and he's like, this thing rides great. Like, I was like, yeah, well, it's built for comfort,
Yep. And
But,
you had that oversized, you put an oversized fuel tank
I
or
put an
system
extra
in it, a spare
fuel,
tank.
yeah, I put an extra fuel tank in it because the TJ tank, and those 4.0s, they're pretty hardy, but they don't get the best fuel mileage for the Revell. The year that they went, Kaylee and Tara had said we won, but there was a couple checkpoints that we skipped because we thought we were going to run out of fuel, and I was like, we can't have that. So I had put an extra fuel tank in the back with this whole deck that bolts into the floor, and all of your spares are strapped down, and everything's fully, held in place. So that way stuff doesn't fly around while you're scooting through the desert. But it was 5 gallons, but it had to be a actual fuel cell, and it had to be plumbed into the factory fuel system. So that's all fully self-contained, because the rally goes through a bunch of this, like they go through the BLM areas, including Johnson Valley. So they have to follow the same rules that like Dave has to for King of the Hammers, which is, for fueling at King of the Hammers. Obviously there's fueling going on, but it has to be in a designated pit location with a tarp, and they have BLM people out there watching and yada, yada. Well, Emily can't have that on the rally because like, what are you gonna do? Set up a designated fueling area for people to fill up out of jerry cans or something, right?
Right.
And so, she just says, however much fuel you have is how much fuel you have. And I was like, we can't have that. So I did all that so to give it more range, which, it actually helped in the Nevada Trophy event we did too. Just, so that way you didn't have to worry about running out, because you could make it as far as anyone else could then too.
Right.
Before the TJ, going for every checkpoint would be, you're probably the most handicapped on fuel at that point.
Right.
But we ended up, like I said, selling that, and we're glad that it went to someone who's gonna use it. I know that they've actually taken it out on some trails out in Florence and just out exploring in the desert, and they love it. And because we're like, who's gonna, so much time and work went into this thing to, I tweaked every little thing that I could on it to make it the best it could possibly be. Because we stripped it all the way down to the frame and started there. I cut every bracket off of the frame and re-welded all new brackets that are stronger, and skid plated everything and flat bellied it, and did everything I could to make it perform as best as possible. So.
And you did a good job. I mean, there's no doubt
Yeah.
about it. When you drove off High Dive that one time when you were with us out at Moab, I was like, all right, I'm impressed. Because there's no way I'm driving off that thing in anything.
Yeah, you were like, you're going to drive off of High Dive and what looks to be a stock TJ?
Exactly.
I was like, yeah, this isn't a problem. But now we have our JL. I didn't, obviously didn't go as crazy as I did on the TJ, but kind of built it the same as the TJ. It's got a deck that bolts into the back with all of our gear that stays strapped down with a place that you can put the ice chest, and it's got all the spare parts and the tools and fluids, and it's skid plated and ADS shocks and a winch and all that fancy stuff. So we just take that out, and it's a little different with the kid. We've actually taken him out on some trails many times, and just have fun with it with the whole family. We're actually looking into possibly going down. There's a event that we saw in Baja, Mexico, that's like kind of a navigation type rally that goes all the way down to Cabo and all the way back.
Wow.
Both. we've been talking to some people about possibly going and doing that, just because it'd be super fun. And Kaylee's never been to Baja. And I've been down there to race the 1,000 with the Campbells a couple times, and it's just I love Baja. I don't know.
It's
awesome.
It's the last of the Wild West.
Yeah, and then besides that, we recently got a cab over camper for the truck, and we want to take that out and go to some, go camping in some locations for a week, or go to a national park or a road trip, and just take RJ, our son, with us, and go have a good time.
Excellent. So let's talk about your snake bite. You got bit by a rattlesnake here recently. You're the second person that I know that's gotten bitten, and it's not a pleasant experience.
No, it hurts like real bad. I'm actually, this is the ninth day since I've been bit, and it was Monday of last week. I just got home from work, and I went into the backyard to pick up. There was some brush that we had accumulated while working in the backyard previously, and I went to clean it up so that way when I left the following day to go to Ultra 4 Nationals, that the Kaylee could take the dog out without having to worry about snakes being underneath there and whatever, right? Well, go figure. I started picking up the brush, and I made it through one pile, and I started on the second pile, and they're pretty good piles, like large Palo Verde limbs, and I made it all the way down to 2 limbs left in the pile, and I picked up the second to last limb, and I started to turn to go take it over to load on the trailer, and I just felt a sharp like poke in my leg, and I was like, what? And I turned around and I looked, and there was a freaking rattlesnake, and then it turned and took off into my wood pile, and I was like, dang it. So I quick just dropped the branch, and I went inside, and I said, hey, because my wife works at home, and I said, I just got bit by a rattlesnake. And she's like, go get in the car. And so we drove down to the hospital, and I was in the hospital for 3 or 4 days, and got 3 doses of anti-venom, and got out of the hospital. I couldn't put any weight on it until yesterday, but the bite itself didn't hurt. It's everything after that. It hurt a lot. That first night in the hospital, I didn't sleep. I could not get comfortable. They had me on morphine and Vicodin, and I was getting the anti-venom shot too, and that didn't matter. It just hurt so bad I could not get comfortable to actually sleep.
Right, because that venom attacks the muscle.
Yeah, and I was very bummed because I was missing out on Ultra 4 Nationals then, and I didn't want to let Bailey down. So that didn't work out very well for me.
No.
But I know that she was looking forward to the last race of the year, and that it was going to be lots of rocks, because both of us love those types of courses more than like short course. But Brian jumped in with her, and she did good. So I was very happy with that, but I was still bummed in general that I wanted to try to get out of the hospital and at least be there, to support her.
But that wasn't going to happen.
No. I got out of the hospital Thursday evening, and like I said, I couldn't even walk till yesterday. Like, yesterday was the first time I could put my foot down on the ground. I still can't really walk. I can like hobble around.
Wow.
But I don't recommend it. It sucks.
Yeah, so you're going to be a lot more careful now when you're moving brush piles?
I mean, yeah, I'm always pretty careful, but I couldn't really see him at all. He was curled up under. It was Monday. It was pretty cool. It was like one of the last days where it was like warm in the middle of the day, and then that was it. So that's when they're on their last moves before they go into hibernation, is when it's just barely warm in the middle of the day.
Right.
And yeah, these Palo Verde branches were huge. So I'm pretty sure I like stepped forward closer to where it was at after I picked up that second branch, because it was so heavy. And I know you know about the desert, everything pokes you. So those Palo Verdes have a million little sharp ends on them. And when they're grown out, they're hard to see through. It's not like you can just see through it, even though there's not really any leaves on them.
Right.
So, yep, he was underneath there and snuck out and bit me in the ankle.
It's one of the things I've always been careful about, especially with anything that we've done in the south central or southwest is rattlesnakes. A couple of years ago, I was setting up early in the morning. It was about 6:15, 6 o'clock in the morning, and at Mason, at K2, and there was a spot that I'd already decided I was going to put a cone, a bonus cone at. And so I climbed up on the rock, reached the cone up there, and then needed to position it just right and measure it. And so I set the cone up, and then I got up all the way up there, and I'd put my hand about 6-8 inches away from a snake that was trying to warm itself, and luckily it was still early in the morning. And I backed off and went, oh shit, and ran to get my pistol because I carry a 357 with snake shot in it. But I didn't have it on me. It was in the Jeep. By the time I came back, the snake probably realized, and he took off. But it was the closest call for me. But luckily, it was early in the morning, and the snake wasn't very active at that point because it was still cold.
Yeah, when it's cold, they're a little slow.
Yes. But you got to be careful. That's all the events that we've done at Congress and Baghdad and Tucson. It doesn't matter how clean an area seems to be. They'll find a spot.
Yeah, our backyard's pretty. When we moved in, it's an acre and it's desert, so there was a lot of just overgrown cactus and stuff like that. And I spent about 2 months cleaning the whole yard. Where you can walk out the back door and there's trees and I left cactus and stuff everywhere, but it's just real clean on the ground where you can see the whole ground across the whole yard.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that they're not there. I've still seen them over the years, but it makes it easier to see them.
Correct. And that's the whole idea.
Yep.
Well, Ryan, thank you so much for coming on board and sharing your life and stories with us. I really appreciate it. I've appreciated your friendship over the years. You've been one of those guys that's just a solid dude, and you're unflappable. I mean, everybody jokes with you, and you always have a smile on your face. I've never seen you get upset. I'm sure there's been a time that you have, but I've never seen it. And you always got that little chuckle like you just did. And, you're just one of those guys. It's fun to be around. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you, Rich.
And say hello to Kaylee for me, and I will we'll catch up here soon.
Yeah, we'll see you, I'm sure.
Okay. You take care.
All right.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Well, that's another episode of Conversations with Big Rich. I'd like to thank you all for listening. If you could do us a favor and leave us a review on any podcast service that you happen to be listening on, or send us an email or a text message or a Facebook message, and let me know any ideas that you have, or if there's anybody that you have that you think would be a great guest, please forward the contact information to me so that we can try to get them on. And always remember, live life to the fullest. Enjoying life is a must. Follow your dreams and live life with all the gusto you can. Thank you.